Okay, we can hopefully finish this lesson series today. We didn't get a chance to finish it last week, so we're going to wrap up today with understanding the Bible. As we said last time, I want you to get this, that the Bible characters and their stories make for some excellent soap operas. And I told you the story of these three people. And when we talked about David, we talked about how he orchestrated the plot to kill Uriah so he could get his wife. We also talked about Jacob and the drama and stuff that he had to go through to finally get the woman that he loved, and how his father-in-law Laban had plotted against him the day of the wedding, and then all of that type of stuff. We also talked about Samson and the drama and the life saga that he went through. We're going to touch a little bit on some of that, but all of these Bible characters give us something very, very rich when it comes to truly understanding the Bible and looking through the different lenses. Here's where we're going to pick up today. I want you to understand that the Bible accurately depicts the human condition. When I say it accurately depicts the human condition, what we're talking about is these stories that were recorded, that were written down, that we read, that we hold so in such reverence, give you a clear idea, so to speak, of what life was like for people. There is this habit that we have of exalting the Bible characters so highly in our minds that we easily forget that they were flesh and blood people. We exalt them so much that we forget, or we don't even take into consideration, that sometimes they had gas. We exalt them so highly that we forget our oneness with them. You see, they were people with real problems, with very human problems, with very human phobias. Now, there are some phobias that some people have that others don't. There are some people that have phobias of spiders. But when we look at these biblical characters, we exalt them so high that we don't even think about, hey, how did they feel about spiders? They were people just like you and I. They had real fears. Their humanity often makes them approachable, touchable, and not all that unlike ourselves. We've been looking at the different lenses through which to view or read the Bible. We're closing out this series with the dramatic lens. And I want to share with you one very familiar story and put the dramatic lens on that particular story. And you'll find this in its entirety in Luke, the 15th chapter, the 11th through the 32nd verse. And as soon as I begin, you will all recognize the story. And he said, A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he would fain, have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat. And no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger. I will arise and go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drawed nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing, and he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he answered, said to his father, lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this thy son has come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. When we look at this through the dramatic lens, there are three things that I want us to note with this entire story. There's a reason I read the entire story to you. When we're looking at the dramatic lens, all three characters have an internal drama going on. All of the characters, not just the three main characters, but everybody in the story got something going on. First of all, this younger son, he has to overcome the shame in returning home. But there was some other drama that the younger boy had. The younger boy, you could also say that he had some greed. He was also, as my grandmother would say, smelling himself. He felt like, I'm grown now. I should be able to do whatever I want. That was something that the younger son had going on. But then now we also got this other son, the older one, who has to face his anger and face his jealousy. Because see, he was what they call a goody two-shoes. He's telling Dad, look, I've been here all the time, and I ain't never done nothing wrong. And then he started pointing fingers at his brother. You see, there's sometimes that we point a finger at somebody else, but this was his brother who he was pointing a finger at and saying, you know what, look at what he did. Trying to bring out the faults in someone else. So now you got these two brothers who got their own dramas going on. Daddy was also in the mix. Here you have this father trying to work things out between his own blood. That presented a lot of drama. I read the entire story because I want this to be kind of like a recap of everything that we've done, everything that we've talked about over these past 7 weeks. I think we've done this. I want to give you this same story and put some of the other lenses on it. So if we're looking at these other interpretive lenses, let's look at this story that we just read in a literary or with a literary lens. I gave you the whole story because I want you to see that it reads very well and it contains rich images and messages for its reader. Now, does it read exactly the way English literature or the English language is today? No, but it's pretty understandable, isn't it? So from how it's written, how it's presented, it covers the criteria of being well written and well presented, which then we have to begin to look at the factual lens and ask or say that this story could be true, that it happened just the way we read it, because this kind of thing happened in families all the time. So looking at the factual lens, we have to begin to see, is this actually historical? Is Jesus telling a story about something that actually happened or actually took place? Is he repeating something verbatim, or is it possible that he may be embellishing or may have embellished the facts of the story just a bit to get more attention from the audience? If we look at the factual or the historical of the time and how they did things, it was quite natural for them to embellish things just a little bit to get more of a response from the audience. Jesus, I want you to know that one thing that it was very, very important for him in his ministry, he knew his audience. So when he embellished, he did so with the intent of getting their attention. That's why the comedic lens can be put to this exact same story. Because the minute he said in the story, there was a man that had 2 sons, everybody he was talking to knew what was going to happen. They knew what was going to happen. It's like if the equivalent of me saying to you, 3 guys walk into a bar. You know a joke is coming. So as soon as he said, a man had 2 sons, that could be the comedic view of looking at that particular story. Now, also, we can take another one of the lenses and put on this same particular story, and that is the prophetic lens. That this story tells of a time when all fathers would accept their children regardless of what has happened before. To be able to predict a time and see that there is going to be an opportunity for reconciliation in families. Also, we can look at this through the allegorical lens, that the story is not just about one particular family, but it is about a community, that the father could be allegorically a community leader providing sufficiently for the needs of its people. Now, when we look at the allegorical, the metaphysical lens is so closely related to it. I want to share this with you. When we're looking at the allegorical or the metaphysical lens, I want you to get this here. Very, very cool. Very, 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 very important. In verse 13, it said, and not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took a journey into a far country. You see, if we're looking at this story factually, it could be said that he went from Flint to Southfield. Or he went from Michigan to Ohio. But metaphysically, I want you to get this. Country represents consciousness. Anytime you are moving from one country to another, that represents a change in consciousness, a change in your thinking. And there is a time, or there comes a time in everyone's life that a change in consciousness is necessary. So you have to leave one country and go to another. But here's the thing about changing consciousness and moving from one country to another. You cannot go into a new country or a new consciousness with the same stuff that you had from the old one. So if we're looking at this story from the allegorical and the metaphysical lens, it only stands to reason that when he went from one country to another, that everything went down. Because it also said that what he did was the young son gathered together all and took his journey into a far country. He got everything that he had around him, took the same people, took the same stuff, picked all of that up, and then shifted. You see, we have the tendency to do that same thing. When we grow, we also outgrow. But we sometimes don't want to accept that we outgrow certain things. Then when we move here, We've outgrown that, but yet we want to bring all of that old stuff, that old mentality, that way of thinking with us into this new way of doing things. The new consciousness cannot hold the old way of thinking. That new consciousness is what caused Samson so much trouble. You see, Samson, when we looked at his story and what happened, Samson's weakness. We always look about, we know Samson, when we tell that story, Samson was a strong person. But here, what makes us stronger, what we have to learn from that particular story, is that what makes us strong is knowing our weaknesses. And Samson did not recognize his weakness. He had a weakness for foreign women. Okay? Women metaphysically represent our feeling nature. So when we begin to look at our feelings that are foreign, that are against who we are, that are not in alignment to our best and highest good, that is a foreign feeling. You're doing like Samson. You are falling for that Timnath woman. There was another country. He fell for something outside of himself. If you don't get anything else out of this message, I want you to get this. We, you, I, are at our weakest point when we reach outside of ourselves. That's the message we learned from Samson. His foreign feelings got the best of him. And he aligned with something outside of his country. You see, that woman came from a different country, a different consciousness. And soon as he connected with that, just like the prodigal son, that's when things went south. That's when things go sour. So when we're trying to figure out why things are happening to me, and they do, it's more than likely because we are trying to move into a new country and we are still holding on to the old country style. Outside of yourself. Do I? No. Because you see, there's sometimes this truth cuts. Not sometimes, but all time. The truth will cut. Wrapping all of this up, when we can begin to realize the different lenses through which to read the Bible or to understand it, it puts it in a better grip for us to comprehend. Each one of these has to be applied when we're looking at Bible characters or biblical stories. One does not do it all. There is never just one way of looking at, as I showed you today, the prodigal son or that particular story. Because when we really look at the story of the prodigal son, it's really not so much about the son, but the actual story is the daddy and how the father handled that situation. And that's what I want us to learn, is how to handle certain situations. And just like there is no one way to view that story, there is no one particular way to handle all situations. So you see, there's a lot for us to learn as we grow and as we progress. As I always say in the open, that we recognize the universal truths in all religions, and we respect each individual's right to choose whatever path they want. And in choosing that path, unity is just one of those paths. As we move forward with the next set of lessons in dealing with order, y'all see, this has happened to me before when I'm going in one direction and God wants to take me in another, and I have to be obedient to Spirit and do what Spirit says. The next set of lessons that I'm going to present is going to be about the unity path. Because we recognize that there's spiritual truths in everybody's, path. But Scripture tells us very, very clearly, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And as for me and my house, as an ordained unity minister, there are certain things about unity that is just unity. In September, I always try to do a Back to Basics series. So over the next couple of weeks, maintaining order, I'm going to get back to basics and give just the unity basics in order to establish that harmony and that balance. And the harmony that we have now is our soloist for today, Brad Clark.
Christ alone, my hope is found. He is the light, my strength, my song, the cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. With the love, what depths of peace, when tears are still, when striving cease, my comforter, my all in all. Here in the love of Christ I stand. Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in hell, less pain, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to save. Cross, as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on him was laid. Here in the death of Christ I live. There in the ground his body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth glorious day. Up from the ground he rose again. And as he stands in victory, sin's curse has lost its grip on me. For I am his, and he is mine, bought with the precious love of Christ. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand. He returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand. You're welcome. We'll be looking for you back here now. I'm singing for Annie today.
Thank you so much.